Now, today we're going to talk about James Long. Now, Mr. Long was born in the United States in Virginia in 1793. You have to understand, in 1793, Texas, where we live, was part of Spain. The United States had absolutely no claim to Texas. So Mr. Long, only as he got older, he joined the United States Army as a surgeon. He saw action in the War of 1812, and he even served at the Battle of New Orleans. A few years later, in 1819, the United States and Spain signed a treaty, the Adams-Onis Treaty, stating that the United States had absolutely no claim whatsoever to Texas. Now, Mr. Long and quite a few others did not agree with that, and Mr. Long assembled 120 men and raised $500,000. And then, in that year, 1819, he and his men crossed the Sabine River and captured Nacogdoches. And they declared that Nacogdoches and Texas was no longer under the control of Spain. It was now independent.
We're going to talk about what is a filibuster. A filibuster is an illegal, absolutely illegal expedition to go do something. Now, in Mr. James Long's case, he was a filibuster. He organized those men who assembled over there in Louisiana, 120 of them, and they crossed the Sabine River to attack and take over Nacogdoches, completely without permission from the United States government, completely without their support, on their own. Do you think that would cause some problems? Absolutely.
Now, by July of 1819, Mr. Long's forces had swelled from 120 men to 300 men. Needing supplies, they petitioned to the United States to try to get the things that they needed, but not receiving them. Then they approached John Lafitte for the supplies, the notorious pirate based out of Galveston. They didn't receive those. 2 months later, the governor of Texas, the Spanish governor of Texas, sent men on their way to Nacogdoches to drive Long and the forces out. Just a little while later, towards the end of October, the Spanish forces arrived and drove James Long and the forces out, but Long escaped to Louisiana. And just 2 years later, he returned back to Texas and established himself on Bolivar Peninsula with his wife, and you may know her, Jane Long. September of 1821, Mexico got its independence from Spain, but then also James Long left Bolivar Peninsula with 52 men to go capture San Antonio, which he did, but he wasn't able to hold on to it because just 4 days later, James Long was forced to surrender to the garrison there in San Antonio. He was taken to Mexico City, where he was imprisoned. But then, after 6 months of imprisonment, he was shot and killed.
Now, the flag here was carried by Mr. James Long when he returned to Texas, set up himself on Bolivar Peninsula, and he carried this flag when he took those 50 some odd men to San Antonio to attack and take over San Antonio. Look at that. It was made by his lovely wife, Jane Long.